Okay, so just do a quick introduction again, just now that we're recording. So we have Ben Perry and Karen Nunn Perry. We're really excited to have them here today. Ben is a stage 4 pancreatic cancer patient, and Karen is his wife. Amongst many other things, they've been really great advocates in the community of pancreatic cancer and helping other patients that are going through it, and really great advocates in the peer support group that we offer every week. So we're really grateful to have them here and grateful for their vulnerability and willingness to share. So without further ado, I will hand it over to them.
Okay. Did you see the presentation pop up?
Yes.
Yes. And you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Just bear with me one moment so I can move this down here and start the presentation slideshow.
I'm glad she's with me.
Yeah. From the beginning. Okay, that should be good there. Everybody sees that?
That looks great.
Right. So this is just our front screen and so navigating our journey of pancreatic cancer, that's mostly what that is what we're talking about today. But those photos on the front are pancreatic cancer cells. We had a tour of the Pancreatic Cancer Research Center at Dalhousie, and they were kind enough to give us a couple of these photos, and we were just kind of struck with how beautiful they kind of are. And, you know, it's kind of the irony of how kind of pretty they look with the reality of pancreatic cancer. So the green part of the photos, that's the actual cancer. And in between all of it, you'll see kind of little dots in different colors. That's immune cells. That's a high level, the high level description of what those cells are. But we just kind of thought they were fascinating looking, and we just kind of wanted to start the presentation with that.
I kind of want to get them printed off and get put up in the office, just as a reminder of what it is. They add dye to the cell, to the image, and then they wipe it clean and add another dye to it, and then they layer them on top and then take pictures. They were looking for what do you call it? Repetition. Okay.
So yeah, just a quick introduction of ourselves. And you go first.
Okay. I'm from St. Louis, Prince Edward Island, and I am now an herbalist, but I did start off as a machinist back many years ago, and I've done many things. I was a tailor for 6 years, sold clothes in a high-end men's store, did some welding, and then eventually when I fell into a job as an herbalist assistant, I fell in love with it and opened my business in 2004.
So myself, I'm a Cape Bretoner. So Cape Breton is a little island not a little island, it's a fairly big island off of Nova Scotia, but we are part of Nova Scotia. So I grew up in a little town there called Sydney Mines. I currently work with the federal government as a trademarks examiner with the Canadian Intellectual Property Office. That's kind of my latest career. I took that career on just in the past year. Which we'll talk about later when we talk about the life changes we've had to make. I work full-time remotely now, and that's kind of been a game changer for us on this cancer journey we're on, but we can talk more about that later. We've actually only been married for 2 years. We've been together for 10. Together we have 4 adult children. And as mentioned earlier, we do live in Dartmouth. But our plan, I have here in brackets, soon to be in the woods. We are currently here at our cottage, and our goal is to move here by the end of the summer. Today's conversation, we've got kind of several topics we're going to talk about. First, we're going to talk about Ben's health background and timelines, just to kind of give you an idea of the, how everything kind of happened in sequence. We're going to have a discussion about grief following diagnosis. Ben will talk about it from his perspective as the patient, And I'll talk about from my perspective as the caregiver. We kind of have a statement here. We have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Now what? So we'll kind of talk about after the shock of it has set in. We'll be talking about dealing with treatments. We'll have a list of positive distractions, things that helped us through our journey. Some of our ongoing challenges, because we still have them. We're going to kind of almost finish off with some quotes from patients. These are Ben's friends from the peer-to-peer group. And then we'll end with just a little discussion about hope for our future. All right. You're on, Ben.
Okay, so history of stomach issues. I can remember back in 1995 when we were at a friend's house and we were having dinner, and it was chicken cordon bleu, one of my favorite meals. And it came up as a subject, and they were all talking about flatulence and how this one's wife said, "Oh, my husband's is the worst," and that one's wife, da da da. And my ex-wife said, "No, Ben's is the worst." And that's one. It definitely was after it came. Everyone understood that, yes. And then moving forward, I had some exams, some tests done on my stomach issues and different things, and they couldn't find anything. Like that was in 2005, and there was nothing. There was nothing. And then finally, up until just before diagnosed, it was in July, and I was having a rough time at our cottage. And I said to Karen, I'm going to get tested when I get home this weekend. And being a stubborn male, I didn't go. And someone had said at that point, I think it was then, or maybe it was until September, someone had said, "Ben, you're kind of looking yellow," and we never really paid any attention to it until I was in getting some tire work done. And someone said that you were yellow, and I went home and asked Karen, and and that's when we set the wheels in motion to go see a doctor. And up until that point, it would take me 3 to 5 visits every morning before I could go out the door to go to work. I'd visits in the bathroom, and I don't need to tell you what that is, but we can assume. And that was for months. And I stopped eating bread, I stopped eating milk, I stopped eating peanuts, I stopped eating everything I thought that it could be, and nothing was happening. So we finally went in and got blood work done.
Yeah, so just to interject a little. So because I'd known Ben for years, and ever since I'd known him, he'd always have these stomach issues. And I kept saying to him, "You got to get yourself checked. You got to get yourself checked." And I don't want to stereotype, but I think more men than women are a little more apprehensive to go to the doctor sometimes. Not saying that's for everyone, but I was concerned for quite some time. And then when that summer of 2021 happened, and things were obviously going downhill, we kind of knew then something was going on. So that's when he finally got in to see his GP in September. And that wasn't such a great experience. And
yeah, and as I start into this, I'll say one of my quotes from one of my friends, John, he says, "Be your biggest advocate when it comes to your health." So I went in to see my doctor, he does not have good bedside manners. And I went to tell him what my issues were, and he put his finger up and he shushed me. So he got the blood work done, and a week later I came back to get the results. And the first thing he said was, "Your liver enzymes are up. How much do you drink?" And I said, 4 to 5 beer a week. And he said, "That's your problem. You drink too much." And I stood up, raised my voice, and pretty much got in his face and said, "No, there's something else wrong with me. You must have been mistaken for my 5 alcoholic brothers who drink too much." So then he sheepishly turned around and put down some more notes on the computer to do another blood work.
And sent you for an ultrasound.
And sent for an ultrasound. So then 2 weeks later, I get the results back, and he's sitting down at the table, and he says to me, "When you came in and you were telling me your issues, is this what it was?" And I said, "Yes." "And do you remember when you put your finger up and shushed me?" And then he turns around again with his head down and looks back at his computer. And The following day, I went to the hospital that day, stayed in overnight. The following day, he calls me up at the hospital. And the doctor, I asked the surgeon there, is this normal? And she's like, oh, yeah, he's just really concerned about you. I don't think he was concerned about me, but he just, and again, advocate for yourself.
So that led to his hospital stay, which commenced on October 2021. So basically, he took those ultrasound results, and the doctor said, yes, you're going to have to go into the hospital, give them this piece of paper. And Ben's like, well, do I have to embellish it all? What? Because at this point, I don't think, well, we didn't know the gravity of what was about to happen. He's like, no, just show them this paper, and they're going to see you right away. So Ben was like, oh, okay. So he went down himself and called me later, and
Hours later.
yeah, and said, yeah, they're going to keep me in. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because at this point he was jaundiced, so we knew there was definitely something going on. So I got into the hospital that evening. Before I get in there, they had done a CT scan. And luckily they didn't come with the results until we were both there together. And for me, that moment when that doctor came in to tell us that he had a mass on his pancreas, my throat dropped to my stomach, my heart dropped to my stomach. I actually went into a full-fledged panic attack. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced one, but at that moment, I actually thought I was going to have a doctor myself. But it was kind of then that the gravity of it all struck, and it was kind of the beginning of the beginning of this journey, really. So through your 5 days in the hospital, of course, lots more tests. They put a stent in his duct there, which opened up things enough so that all of those terrible juices that were backed up were able to kind of flow back through. So the tumor had been pressing on there. So once they put the stent in, it was really only a matter of 24 hours, and he was looking so much better, and was even starting to get an appetite back. But of course, we knew that was a temporary solution. So he was in the hospital for 5 days. At the time in the hospital, they told us that the tumor looked resectable, so that we kind of felt a little optimistic that maybe we were going to be able to get this tumor out. But it really wasn't until that night that I went home and started Googling pancreatic cancer, that just scared the living daylights out of me. So Ben was in the hospital for 5 days. He got discharged just as, I think it was Thanksgiving. It was Thanksgiving weekend. Yeah. And so that's when we started some hard conversations, through many tears, through many moments of not really knowing what to say. So you'll see our next kind of milestone was getting married. So you'll see October 5th, he was in the hospital. October 22nd, we got married. I don't know if you want to say how that conversation went.
We were sitting there, we had talked about it for many years, getting married, and we had kind of made a commitment ceremony to each other back in, I think it was 5 years earlier when I had turned 50, and she turned 45. And, but she said, we don't need to get married to show we love each other. We're committed, da, 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 da. But then she looked at me and she said, you know what, if we are going to go through this journey together, I want to go through this journey with you as your wife. So 10 days later, we got married. She had called a friend of hers who was a master of, what do you call it? Justice peace. And how quickly do you want to go? And we told him, and boom, it was done.
So 10 days, we pulled the wedding together in 10 days.
Yeah.
It was small. We just had our children, a couple of our best friends, and then afterwards we had a bit of a celebration at a restaurant. And that day was a bit of a positive day because the morning before we got married, we actually met with the surgeon, and they were still at that point talking surgery. So we were kind of feeling optimistic, and we were on a bit of a high that day. Um, it was a great day. It was a beautiful day. There was no stress.
Well, that's because they told us that, yeah, we can take it
Yeah,
out. And then they will book for you within a month or so, we'll book your surgery. So yeah, over the top.
yeah. So between October and I guess December, that's when we got some more scans done, and they were not looking so good, mainly because they had seen some spots on his liver, and then the second time around came for more scans, and the liver lesions had grown. So the next time we went in to see the surgeon, um, it was not so great news. Of course, once things spread, you kind of are removed from the possibility of having surgery, and that was probably the next most devastating day of this. So we
Well, we went outside the building, we sat down just on the curb initially, and Karen looked over to her right and she said, "That's a really pretty tree." And she had never noticed it all the other times walking in. And I said, "Well, that's good because we have two similar ones that I planted at the cottage about 5 years ago." Then we went to the car and we sat in the car for 30 minutes and just tears were flowing. And, everyone, yeah, yeah, we got floored there.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about grief here in the next slide. So moving on, in amongst all that, I actually from day one I kind of started diving into research. I know for some people, like they don't want to know. They don't want to know the statistics. They don't want to learn about the biology. But I was all over that like a wet blanket. I couldn't learn enough. So in my researching, um, and just with Ben's previous issues with his stomach, like we were like, okay, what brought us to this point? Like how did this cancer develop in the first place? Of course, some of it's genetics, but we're also learning through research that some of it is, our lifestyles, our diets, stress, what have you. So we made the decision to go see a naturopathic doctor, and he was very helpful in that he recommended that Ben get some blood work done to see what his food allergies would be, and not necessarily the type of allergy that's anaphylactic, but the type of food allergy that is causing inflammation in your body, which then results in your immune system not functioning great. And he thought that by identifying those foods and removing them, that would be a step in the right direction. So
Because we know we've read, quite a few articles on the immune system and inflammation and how eliminating inflammation can make you heal, can help you feel better. So this is what we agreed.
yeah,
So we found out there was probably
several foods.
6 to 10, but about 6, 7 that are the main ones that I'm still off of. So we stopped that immediately, and within weeks, I actually started to feel better.
Yeah.
Just yeah, and still to this day, I'm off. And Karen's looked at me more than once and said, "I can't believe you're still on that diet." It's 2 years later. I was like, "Yeah, well, I want to live."
So that was like, I think that's probably in between uh, being told you're not having surgery and realizing this is really serious, to even starting any treatment. I think physically that's when Ben felt his best, is when he started to eat the foods that were agreeing with him. Um, so so that leads us to December 17th, which is, as you know, a couple of days before Christmas. We go in and see our oncologist, and that's when we get the official stage for diagnosis, because we had done a biopsy earlier that month, and this is when we got the results that yes, the tumor is cancer, and it's the most common one, which is the most aggressive one. So again, December 17th is another one of those days that will go down as another devastating day for us. Then a month later is when chemo started. I don't know if you want to just talk about, and of course, all of this is happening right in the middle of COVID. So getting into doctors was a real challenge. When Ben's chemo started, I couldn't even go with him. That first day, I just kind of roamed around the streets of Halifax, just kind of in a daze. I felt so bad I couldn't be there. And of course, he was nervous going in there, never really knowing what to expect. But you know, he handled it really well. And
But what I found there, and I tell a lot of people when they're going in for it, as soon as you start to feel sick, let them know because they can give you a shot of this, a pill for that right away. The first time I didn't, I was like, I'm going to be tough and take it, you know, and I did, but then you know, it was getting worse and worse and worse, and I felt very upset. And then when I talked to other people after that first initial day, they said, no, 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 you need to tell them right away, get the meds into you so you don't feel sick, so you can, you know, last the whole journey for the day. So that was fine. I did find the more I ate, the sicker I felt in there. So I started to just hydrate myself more, uh, Gatorade and water when I was in there, and I knew if I ate something that it wouldn't agree with me, so I just stayed right off that. So we moved forward to March, April. We started getting some nicer looking scans, and
yeah, we actually had three types. They started with a PET scan. That was actually at the end of February. And then I think it was an MRI next, and then a CT. I'm not really sure the order, but um, amazingly, the basically the liver lesions on all scans were nowhere to be seen. And I think the reason why we had the three scans was because the doctors were a little baffled as to the fact that Ben was responding so well. And he actually, the PET scan, nothing showed up. But of course, we were quickly reminded that PET scans, you know, it's just one tool they use. So we're like, okay, so let's go on to the next. So we knew that the tumor was still there, but it had shrunk. But all three scans, the liver lesions were nowhere to be seen. So then I guess our roller coaster started to go back up a bit because our oncologist at the time said, you know, I'm not making any promises, but we're going to send your file back to the surgeons to see if they'll reconsider you for Whipple surgery.
so the oncologist had said, he said, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing what you're doing. So then now we're off to see the surgeon, and we get in there and we're having a talk with her, and she looks at me and she says, Mr. Perry, I honestly never ever expected to see you in my office again. And it kind of gives you a little, still to this day, gives you a little shiver, you know, chills through you to think that, you know, this is what like anyway, it was one of the better days in the journey. So then they said, okay, we can book you for surgery. So they hit us June 16th was their surgery date. Getting into that.
That's a whole other journey in itself. I guess we'll talk a little bit about the Whipple surgery. It was a long surgery. Of course, all of my friends wanted to be with me that day. For me, the way I dealt with it, I had to be by myself because, you know, you hear the stories of people going in for Whipple surgery. They open you up, they find cancer, and then they close you back up. So that was kind of my biggest concern. And then, of course, my concern with the risks of the surgery itself. And when after 8 hours, I wasn't hearing anything, I was starting to get really concerned. I went into the hospital, but again, I couldn't stay because of COVID. So they basically sent me home to wait for a phone call. And finally, it was late at night. I got a call from the surgeon, told me the surgery went well. And so then, of course, I was relieved.
And that was all because I have an odd liver that only 3% of the people on the planet have. The main arteries in it is on the opposite side.
So it took them a little longer to rejig whatever they had to rejig. But overall, the surgery went flying colors. He only spent 5 days in the hospital. He was up and out of his bed.
Doing push-ups off the edge of my bed on the fourth day because I wanted to get out of the hospital. I'd wake up at 4:30 at night and I was sore because you're lying in bed all the time. And I'd go for a walk and the nurses at the stations are looking at me like, "What are you doing up?" And I was walking as much as I could, 2 to 2.5 kilometers a day. Like anytime I was up, because I knew they said you got to get up, you got to get moving. And I think the biggest thing, the best part of it all, anyone who's had the surgery, you're allowed to get out of here as soon as you have a bowel movement. So it's
that was kind of our mini goal.
it was like when your child has their first bowel movement on their own. It was like, oh my God, it's amazing.
I know it sounds silly, but we were excited. But just to retract a little bit, those first few days were really rough when I first laid eyes on him. Yeah, it was not a good sight. Of course, the tubes are sticking out. He's swollen. He's on pretty strong narcotics. So anyway, but yeah, we were very happy that he recovered as well as he did.
And one of the things, and I tell a lot of people, when I was in the hospital and you're lying there in pain and there was something up with the drugs and they had to wean me off one and put me onto another one. And they said that, like, well, I was seeing ghosts and shadows and creatures, so that's why they were weaning me off. But I'm lying in the hospital bed and I'm in a lot of pain and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, you know what? There's someone in this hospital who's in worse shape than me today. And I said, I know one thing right now that I can look at this window and know that there's not a missile coming through it. So if I lived in the Ukraine right now, that's what was happening at the time. So these poor people are in the hospital. So that kind of gave me a little bit of, this isn't that bad. As bad as it is, someone else has it worse than me.
So then, out of the hospital 5 days, and basically, Ben took the summer to recover. I took some time off work, which I badly needed to do. And just to backtrack to when he was first diagnosed, I took some time off work as well to process it. I did go back to work in between it all, but when he went in for surgery, I took some more time off. And honestly, it was the best decision I ever made. We basically spent the whole summer at the cottage resting.
Well, there's a song I was humming in my head at the hospital when you're lying down and you're dealing with the pain and you're thinking it was some beach somewhere. There's an umbrella shading a chair, and all I could think of was get to the cottage, onto the deck, under an umbrella, and having a coffee in the morning or whatever it may be. And that's 2 weeks later, that's where I was. So it was definitely needed.
Except he got on his tractor much too. So
It's okay. We were
driving his tractor, bumping down the road, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" Anyway,
And then we move along to getting started full Florinox for 5 weeks. And that was the one that was, for me, it did take a lot out of me. I can remember one day, it was just prior to a storm, and I was back to doing tree work. And a customer had called me up and, can you do this for me? And I was like, sure. But I had just had chemo, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 days earlier. And usually for this, when it was on that day, the fourth and fifth day that it took me out of commission. But I said, I got to go. Like, this could potentially, break the house in the storm. So it took me an hour to leave my house in the morning. Then we get out to the job site and I'm putting on my gear and it took me 20 minutes to get going. But once I got up that tree and I started working and my mind was not on like what was bothering me, I don't even remember thinking once that I was ill until I got out and I was taking off my gear and I was putting stuff away and the guy comes over, man, you did that so quickly. I would need to see what you could do when you weren't sick. And then I started to feel sick like almost instantly because I started to think, oh, that's right, I am sick. So kind of just saying that it's just a mindset. If you're, when you're able to think healthy thoughts, I guess. And again, we've read many studies, the placebo effect, it works because we think this is going to work for us. So I guess in a way, there was many times that I was trying to be positive because I'm told by studies that it does work. So I would like to agree with them.
And it must have, because you didn't get your full treatments of FOLFIRINOX. I think it was supposed to go for how many rounds?
10 rounds.
10 rounds, but
10.
his CA19-9 numbers were well under 5.
It was at 2.5.
So the oncologist, it kind of like you're balancing the benefits to the harms of stopping early. So we made the decision to stop without completing it because the neuropathy was getting bad. And I think at that point it was probably doing more harm than good. So he stopped, and that was November 8th. And we rushed over to, because he was supposed to have chemo the next day, but he didn't have to. So they were gracious enough at the chemo floor there to let us in and ring the bell. So that's the picture of us there the day that we rang the bell. And of course, the best news of all, that was November of 2022. Here we are a year and a half later.
24th February.
And Ben is still no evidence of disease. So we celebrate after every result of every scan that we get. Okay, so that's that.
Little long-winded.
Okay, so we do though want to touch on the grief following diagnosis, because sometimes it's hard to talk about for people. For us, we were kind of an open book. We didn't hesitate to share how we were feeling with each other and with our family. But as you can appreciate, it's a different perspective from each of us. Like Ben, as the patient, is going through something different, similar, but different from what I am as the caregiver. So I chose this picture because this is just after his surgery, and I went in to visit him, and I'm wearing my pancreatic cancer bracelets, and you can see his hand, how swollen it was. And so it's just kind of shows you that caregiver patient relationship, and that's kind of been like a symbolic kind of photo for us to and it's not a negative photo. Like, as tough as it was, it's kind of brings us hope seeing that photo. Anyway, I'll let Ben talk about kind of what grief he went through, and then
I know when we were putting this together, I kept saying like the grief. It was grief, but it wasn't grief for me. It was grief, always grief for the people I leave behind. And I remember I had a friend and a brother and a sister come and give me a hug, and they're just crying, and I'm giving them a hug, and there's not a tear coming out of me. And it's mainly because I know that like my pain is up until, I may not, well, at the time we thought we were dying, and my pain would be up until that point. And then as I'm gone, that's when their pain, it's all along, yes, but then that they continue on with the pain for much longer afterwards. So I tried, and I give them my brother a hug and said, it's okay, it's okay. So I felt like I was supporting them. And when we get back to, when we share it, we have no problem sharing it. I find that it's a calling now in life in a way to reach out and share my story, so to help someone with their journey. And it doesn't matter, like, we were talking about different things, and we're just going to turn the camera on here for a second. I want to show these things, and my friend Adele has hers on right now, and I don't know if you can see this or when it's going to come up, but I'm showing the hat. This is a hat for a new friend. Adele is on. I knit them. I do a lot of knitting, and it's kind of one of my ways to it's a therapy for me. And I look at it as, and this one's great, by the way. It's a friend who has brain cancer, so it's not just, it's not just pancreatic cancer. But and now the arthritis and the carpal tunnel is starting to bother my hands a lot. But I keep knitting it, and I think that the amount of joy and love and hope that it gives to people that I knit it for, that's why I knit them. And it's not about my pain. It's not, I appreciate the fact that I'm able to do that for someone. So when we talk about my perspective, it's quite, I don't know, it's not as what some people may think it is. I think it was actually harder on Karen than on myself. And I've always been that type of person. I think of that other person before I think of myself.
Well, and remember too, like not everybody will experience the same. Like I was amazed at how Ben handled it. And I say to this day, I just if it were me in his shoes, I don't know how I could deal with being faced with that diagnosis. But of course, for me as the caregiver, I don't know, maybe it was good that you were the way you were because I was the way I was, and I got like for me the grief, like I hinted to earlier, for me dealing with some of the grief was just learning as much as I could. Um, Trust me, that first week at least, especially when he was in the hospital, I had my best friend had to come and stay with me because I couldn't sleep. I was just laying in bed up all night crying. Because of course the first things I'm reading is not good. You're looking at the statistics. You're reading about the cancer itself and how it's, one of the most aggressive types of cancer. It just seemed like a lot of bad news. So I was sick. I was sick to my stomach. Um, but again, for me, part of my coping during that time was researching, and of course, I had taken time off work. I had to. There was no way I was going to function at work. And at that time, I leaned on, my family and some pretty close friends to help me get through it.
And our dog.
And our dog, yes.
She came home and told our dog the story.
Yes, I have to mention my dog because we got the dog a few years ago and I didn't want the dog. It was supposed to be Ben's dog. Well, of course, now the dog is mine and she's been there through everything. And, pets. I don't know how many of you have pets, but oh my goodness, like they look at you with that unconditional love and just having them follow you around and be there, it helped me immensely. Um, so yeah, I guess that's kind of it for me until, then I guess the reality sets in and then I guess you turn to the acceptance stage. So our title here is we have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Now what? So of course, Ben is the one with the cancer. But you'll notice that we say we a lot. Like I talk as if I'm taking the treatments, as if I have the cancer, but it's kind of just been one of the ways we've been dealing with it is, it is this pancreatic cancer is ours to deal with.
For sure.
And so now what? So
Well, we've talked about the acceptance, we've talked about our loved ones, and I can remember many times my sisters would be calling me on the phone and talking to me, video calls. And there was a couple of times that my family showed up at our cottage and we didn't know about it. And you don't know like how much that means to you. Even like a phone call is great, and we support you and we support you, and which is it's beyond that's so much. But to have someone physical there with you and they give you that hug, it just helps so much. So as we move along here, we get to know our medical team. You can go ahead on that one.
well, I think that's just, you know, uh, of course, our doctors that we're seeing, they're so busy. So when you get in to see them, your time is limited. So we just knew it was important. And thankfully, even though it was during COVID, they did let me in during these meetings because you do kind of need that second person there because if you're the person there with cancer and you're getting the news, I think sometimes, depending on what's being said, all you're hearing is wah, 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 like you're hearing the bad news. And I think just developing that relationship with your medical team, asking the questions that you need to ask. We would always go in, we'd write our questions and our notes on our phones because sometimes you forget what you want to ask and their time is precious. you don't want to waste their time, but you want to get your answers. You want to get your questions answered. So just having that relationship with your medical team and asking the questions that you need to ask, navigating the system.
Well, looking back on that now, the only thing I would change I would have my phone out to record the conversation so that you're like, what did he say? Oh, you know what? I actually forgot. So that's what I would do there.
Yeah, because even with two of us, we forgot a lot. So navigating the system, like that was a kind of learn as you go. We didn't really, and we didn't really know about Craig's Cause, or even the other organizations that were available to us to kind of help us with that. So it was kind of a little bit like learning as we go. I guess for me too, I read a lot, I researched a lot, so we figured out a lot of what we needed to do just by reading about it. And I don't know, we didn't really have too many people to even ask really at that point.
No, like I said many times, that if we had the access to Craig's Cause at that time, which we did, but we didn't. I guess we did. We didn't. We didn't. The only thing we know about is that we had made some bracelets as a fundraiser, and we made the donation to Craig's Cause, and then but that was well after the fact.
So of course I have the point there, learn, learn, learn. For us, that was very therapeutic. We realized that for some people, either they don't have the energy or they don't want to know. We completely respect that. For us, it was kind of how we got to that acceptance stage, was just understanding. It's almost like you need to know the worst, so you can. I don't even know how to explain it, but other than to say that that knowledge gave us some sense of control.
Control.
Yeah, for sure. And just because in that research, we found little tricks to the trade of different coping mechanisms, which we're going to talk about next. But for us, the learning was critical. So of course, part of being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer is being told a few times by different people, okay, go get your affairs in order. It's kind of the one sentence I think most patients hear during their journey. So we did. We prepared for the worst. We went and we met with the lawyer. We got our wills straightened away. We had to have hard conversations about, like, Ben at the time was owning his own business. He decided to give up his business because we kind of had to make a lot of life changes, because this is our new life now. This is kind of how this is what we're dealing with. So we've got to make some fundamental changes. But hoping for the best all at the same time, because as you know, as we said, we did get to the surgery and it has worked out well for us, and we're so grateful for that. So no matter how bad it seems, like that hope is always there. Taking advantage of the resources, again, that's something that we didn't do in the beginning. We have that on here to let others know that there are resources out there. I mean, look, we're on this call here, all thanks to Craig's Cause. They're a wonderful place to go for resources. Everybody there has been so helpful. They have different, I don't know, different pillars of help, I guess. They've got their research, they've got the education, they even help people out financially, and the awareness piece. So, they can always point you in the right direction if you have any questions about where you need to go. Self-advocacy, we talked about that already. You have to be your biggest advocate. And because, like I said, when you're in speaking to the doctors, you need to have those questions laid out. You need to have those burning questions answered, I guess. Don't let anything, don't be afraid to ask.
And understanding what the answers that you're getting is the hardest part. So you may have to stop and ask, can you explain it? Like it's like they say that there's no bad question.
And you may want to get a second opinion, and there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah, well, we know as a friend who got a second doctor because they weren't happy with the oncologist that they had. So we are entitled in Canada, or as we know in the States perhaps as well, to have a second doctor.
So, and then finally, not being afraid to seek psychological help. I guess Ben says he didn't go for psychological help, but I am not ashamed to say I went for psychological help. Um, I had to have that, and there's no shame in that. I had, even prior to all this, I struggled with anxiety and depression, and so having this on top of everything, there was no question that I was going to reach out, and I made no bones about it, and it's okay to do that, and it helps. Oh, and just one last note on this picture here. This was probably after one of our scans. Every time we had a good scan, we went out and had dinner, and we were walking through the park in Dermot. They have a park dedicated to cancer patients, and this was our favorite bench, which reads, in case you can't see it, it says, "Knowledge is your most powerful tool. Ask questions about treatment and recovery. A healthy immune system is vital. Eat well, exercise regularly, relax more, nurture your spirit, and have fun." So that's just kind of gives you a little bit of a hint that you do have some control over your situation.
And when I looked at that bench, I thought of my friend Blaine, and his quote to me was, "When I'm tired, I rest. When I feel good, I give her all." And it's so true that I found that when I was tired, I just look at Karen, you know what, I need to rest. And then down I would go take my 30-minute nap, and I'm off to go again.
Okay, so I'll let you talk about this because, dealing with treatments, as many of you know, isn't fun. So these were just kind of the things that helped Ben, I guess.
So we already talked about the rest when you need it. For me, I can do a 30-minute nap and I'm back. I'm back to full bore, I guess, if we want to go that way. And then finding a little comfort, that's kind of like when I talk about the knitting that I do, and it's a relaxing, gets you to take your mind off of where you are, whether you're after surgery, before surgery, or not getting surgery. And that's when I would be up in a tree. And I tell people many times when I would be climbing and pruning a big tree was one of the best ones because you could be 3 hours in it, and all I'm doing is looking around where I'm going next. I'm not thinking about anything else but what I'm doing. So it made me feel amazing.
And the reason we put this picture here is because here he is getting his chemo treatment, and he's got his little cozy blanket that was given to him by Victorian Quilts Canada. I don't know if you know about Victorian Quilts Canada, but they are a organization where I guess a bunch of participants get together, volunteers. They make these quilts specifically for cancer patients. So anybody who's going through cancer who wants one of these quilts, they are available. And it was Ben's sister that brought it to him, and he still carries it around. It's like a little silky blanket now. So yeah, finding those little comforts that to help you feel better.
And we know not all of us, when we say accepting help, will take it. Some of us will, some of us need it, some of us need that support. Like I'm not saying all the time, but I mean, for me, the help that I had was from the person sitting next to me, and whether she was helping me or just being there, that was helping me enough. When my family members came by, that having them beside me was like helping me. It was immensely rebuilding me mentally strong, I guess, in a way. Staying active. Sorry.
Yeah, no, for the accepting the help, we had friends come over with meals, and especially during the bad times, which was so appreciated. And if anybody offers to help, you hear a lot of people say, "Let me know if I can do anything to help." Take them up on it. Say, "Yeah, you know what? I could really help if you just came and got me some groceries this day, or if your neighbor, could you take my garbage out next week?" Like, just all those little things. Don't be shy to accept the help if it's being offered.
So staying active. I remember when I first was diagnosed, and I was still feeling ill. I'd be at work with my staff, and the two of them were there, and they were looking at me. "Well, I'll go climb this tree," and I'm like, "No, I could do it." "But you're sick," and I was like, "Yeah, but I'm not that sick." And then I'm going up the tree, and I hear one of them say to the other guy, "You know what? diagnosed with a terminal illness right now, I would not be working. I'd be done. I wouldn't be doing this. But for me, again, it was my comfort food, if you want to call it that. Eating healthy and fucking the comfort food. The uh, for me, again, we talked about it earlier. When I changed my diet, I started to feel so much better. And we don't know, man. Like some could say, you know what? Every time I have coffee, my stomach is sore. Is it the coffee? Could it be the milk? And they tell us to stop eating sugar. We did cut sugar out of our diet, but not completely. I do miss certain sweets because there's too much gluten in them. And like if I'm not gonna go through to tell you what I'm allergic to. There's quite a few of it, but there's certain things that I miss. And my main one would be a
Breakfast sandwich with Gouda cheese.
smoked Gouda cheese, yeah, and a fried egg and butter. Oh my gosh, I miss that so much, but I can't have it anymore. Eating healthy, hydrate. Yes, like again, when I was doing my chemo, and it was drink water, drink water, drink water. And I tell people that, they tell us that we need 8 glasses of water a day or 8 cups of water a day. You don't realize that when you're in chemo, you need 8 minimum, you need 10, you need 12 to help flush it through your system to keep your liver strong. Because going in, oh, your liver, they check your blood, your liver counts are down. Ben. Why are they down? Well, you're not drinking enough water. So pass that forward, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. There you go, coming back to communicating with your doctors.
Yeah.
If I had listened to him the first time and remembered it, that would have been great.
Yeah, and communicating with your doctors too. It didn't really happen to us, but we know that some people struggle with the treatments they're on, and sometimes it's just a matter of tweaking the dosage that you're getting. And that helps you tremendously. So, don't be afraid to talk to your doctor if you're having issues with your treatments, because there are things that you can do to help alleviate some of the after effects.
So this too shall pass. Karen put that on my on my whiteboard in the hospital. And when I would look up, and this too shall pass. And I look at that, we can go to the next one. I think of this too shall pass in a way because tomorrow is going to be a little bit better than today. So healthy distractions, I've talked about what I did with my stuff. I don't know if we have time for that.
No, we don't.
I had a small video of this competition that I was in, and we'll briefly tell you the story. In 21, May of 21, and I'm thinking that, I may not be around for 22. So there was a tree climbing competition I was getting ready for. I was not training, but I was getting ready for it. And I knew that my cardio wasn't good and this and this. And I had said to Karen, I'm going to go and compete the events that I can do where there's no cardio. And I was all excited, and then it got deflated because it got canceled. But then the good news, about a week later, we found out that I could have surgery, so I was fine on that. Jump forward to 22, I decided to go into the competition, and we're having it this time. And Karen showed up in the video. If we had it on, and she's like, I thought you were just gonna, have fun in that one. And I said, well, it was fun, but I went fast. I finished third in that one event. And overall, there was 15 guys there. I'm the oldest by 13, 14 years. The only guy just had, cancer surgery, recovering from cancer, and I finished in 4th place. So just, and again, it was more about just pushing yourself, I guess, a little bit more than I don't think it was more than I should have. It was one of my, reducing my stress. Positive attitude, that's what it would have been. Sorry, we're trying to rush through here this last little bit.
Oh, I'm gonna ignore the first one though. Breathe. That's talk about a coping mechanism that gives you immediate relief is different breathing techniques. In fact, to this day, like if we're hearing something stressful or feeling we hear each other take these deep breaths, and we're like, is everything okay?
Okay.
Yeah, this is no, you know what? But it does, it gives immediate relief, and it even helps you get through panic attacks. I can guarantee you that.
Quality time as a couple. This in itself is quality time as a couple. Preparing this presentation.
Yeah.
Sharing your story. I know we've talked about it a couple of times, but again, we both feel that like sharing the story makes it easier for you at the time. But not everybody's the same way. But definitely, I know the first couple of times I shared, I was crying and I couldn't say anything. And then eventually it got much easier to say. Helping you is helping me. Karen wrote that one.
Yeah, well, that's because, I see Ben in his peer-to-peer group. He loves his peer-to-peer group. It's every Monday nights. It's through Craig's Cause. And I know some of his peer friends are on here. He loves them. He loves talking to people. He loves helping people. But all of that, he's being helped by all of them too. Like, he's knitting these hats for people. That gives him joy. Even though the person who's getting it is loving it and appreciating it, he loves the fact that it's like such a wonderful,
It's a win-win
it
situation.
is a win-win situation. Getting involved in the cause, of course, our involvement of the cause is doing things like this. Craig's Cause has kind of been one of our main things that we do for the cause. We go in the runs every year now, and we just love being involved, and that gives you some sense of satisfaction as well.
When Stephanie and Aaron give me a call, say, Ben, would you like to do this? I tell them, don't ask me to do something. Just tell me and I will do it.
So setting goals. Not everybody has to go into a climbing competition and get fourth place, but even little goals
Like my
for
friend,
yourself.
like my friend Dean. Then when she started, she said, I can't walk this far. And we had said that, maybe we should
Oh,
walk
she didn't
half
know if
that.
it was yours. She didn't
And
know
then,
if it was
and then,
yours. She
and then
didn't know.
eventually,
Oh,
okay, is there mic on there? And then eventually she would walk half the distance and walk back and she was fine and she would push a little further. And then eventually one of her meetings, she's telling someone else that, walking is one of the best things that they do. I love it. Ongoing challenges. We'll skip to the Whipple surgery. I'm having lots of stomach issues and I'm navigating through it slowly but surely. The neuropathy, and I tell other people about it. When it was bad in my toes, I wore the yoga socks with the individual toes. It did help me. And thick wool socks, for some reason, they made my feet feel different. And I can't say it took my mind off of the neuropathy, but maybe it made them itch, maybe it made them feel different. There was something.
It was one of those little comforts, I think.
Yeah, and the scanxiety is a true, like, it's so, for Karen, for me it was like, oh, whatever. There's nothing, I can't change the outcome, so I don't even think about it. But for Karen, it was a really rough thing
And
every time.
that picture there was us coming out from our last scan, which of course was thankfully positive. But like Ben said, I'm the one that's more nervous than him. But it's always such a relief. But it's an ongoing challenge. We're going to have to be faced with this like every 4 months till however long, and you always have to be prepared for the potential of hearing bad news. So that's kind of hard. Financial, we mentioned we're going to be moving. Of course, Ben had to sell his business, but we're okay with that. We have to change our lives to accommodate this new life that we have. So we're simplifying, and it's a challenge, but at the same time, it's going to be really good for us.
So Survivor's Guild, there's many times I do and look at it like, why me? Like, what did I do differently? Why not that? But then I said and my sister said this and someone else said this, but why not me? I look at it and I think of it like, I'd rather it be me than some young person who hasn't lived, who hasn't had a family, who hasn't done this and this and this. Yeah, give it to me. I have big shoulders, put it on my back and I'll do what I can with it. So, but the other time when I do have it, I'll pull over to the side of the road and I have a tear, that I can't believe this is happening to. So other life challenges, and this will barely touch on, but as we're going through cancer journey, there's other things that happen in everyone's life, whether it be family sickness, something else. And we had quite a few challenges, and we're still having them, but it's all part of
Life.
Not growing up, it's all part of life. Navigating your way forward. Okay, let's navigate way forward to the next screen.
Okay, so this is, here's Ben's compilation of
This is one of my favorite screens. So Carol, I met Blaine in June of last year, and he said, we already said it, when I'm tired, I rest. When I feel good, I give her all. When I met Blaine at a Tim Hortons coffee shop, I said to him, we're halfway through this our talk, and I said, just so you know, you're going to get a big hug after this. And he was like, yeah, I was kind of wondering. But then we had made a plan to go visit Carol, and she only lived like an hour and a half from me. And unfortunately, we were unable to go meet up with Carol. But her, and it's at the top of my list because it's one of the biggest ones I remember because she was in her 80s, and she had said that as you know, as I get older and more of my friends are leaving me, and but she said I consider each and every one of you my friend, and I feel the same as her. Everyone that's in my peer group on Monday nights, you're all my friends. And she said it's okay to just be. My friend Rick down in Kentucky. Rick says, I'm either going to beat this thing or I'm going out doing it my way. Adele, wearing the lovely hat today. You may be tired, but don't quit ever. John, we said again, be your biggest advocate when it comes to your health. And Heather Cutler from Newfoundland, thank God he gave us each other to help with the right. Some things we just can't do on our own. And Mark said, I'll take the wins when I get them. And Dean, we talked about it. The best part of my day are my walks. And Angela, everyone knows this one. I love you guys. And my quote is, the surgeon said you can lift more than 10 pounds. So the next day I went and climbed a 60-foot pine tree. And so I'd rather be 60 feet up a tree than 6 feet under the tree.
And we'll quickly go through this slide because I know we're definitely pushing our time here. So this is our hope for the future. We're seeing positive statistics. It just came out of the US. I know we're a couple of years behind the US, but their 5-year survival rate for pancreatic cancer just jumped up to 13%, up another percent from last year. Back in, I forget what year it was 7. So, you know, every year those increases are going, and they do trickle up to Canada. Of course, organizations like Craig's Cause, I feel like they're really starting to make a mark, not only here in our little province of Nova Scotia, but across Canada. And, you know, we have some friends, or Ben has some friends in other countries that participate in the calls. So it's really wonderful what they're doing. Exploding research in pancreatic cancer. As I said earlier, I'm a very serious researcher. Every other day, there's a couple of websites I go on that I read about the most recent research that's coming out, and every other day there's a new something or other. Listen, I don't understand it all because, you know, there's so many proteins and genomes and everything, but there's all these new discoveries. They're sure to add up to some big discoveries very soon, and that leads us to,
well, like we said, when we were at Dalhousie, what they have done here in the little part of Canada is absolutely amazing. Anyway, I mean, we can't go anymore. We can't talk much more. Let's keep going.
Yeah, but they give us a lot of hope. New and improving treatments, you know, new immunotherapies are coming out.
And they're designing treatments specifically for your cancer.
Yeah, so that's the precision medicine. So all that genetic testing, so that they can develop treatments that can then treat you personally. The promise of artificial intelligence, that's another one. I've been reading a lot of research about using AI to predict or for early diagnosis, basically. And so I think we're going to see more of that coming up in the near future. Of course, increasing awareness and advocacy, just little talks like this. And I think they are on the rise as well. Patient partners and research. Ben and I are involved in a network. It's through PHS Hunter. Sorry, I can't remember the rest of it, but you know, there's more of a focus now on involving patients in research so that the researchers can get the patient's perspective, and then they can design the research, you know, with that input. And I think that's going to be, that's going to really improve the types of research that gets done. And last but not least, integrative medicine. Kind of not a big thing here in Canada yet. But I think you're seeing it down in the States, you're seeing it in Europe, you know, not necessarily going completely alternative, but using some of those natural type of treatments, which there are, by the way, a lot of positive research out there for. and evidence that they work very well with standard of care. So looking more at that synergy effect between bridging that gap, I guess, between complementary treatments and standard of care. So we are optimistic that's going to.
So I just wanted to throw in this picture of me and this beautiful purple-haired person next to me. That was our last run in October when we did the Craig's Cause run. And for those of you who have been on the Zoom meetings with us, we started off. I was training. I wanted to run this race and just kind of, stage 4. I hadn't ran since 2011. I wanted to train a little bit for it because I wanted to run it and I wanted to set like just the time. This is what I wanted to be. 2 weeks before, I started running, pulled a hamstring, and could barely walk. So I get to this, and my friend Mark had said, "You know what? You and Steve are unicorns." So I said, "You know what? I'm going to wear a unicorn costume and I'll walk with my team." So I get there, and all the love that's there when people are hugging you and congratulating you, and like you just get so empowered. So I started walking and everybody was gone. I said, "Karen, hell with this, I'm going to run it." So I took off running it, and I was very close to my time running it in a unicorn costume. So it's just the power of love, I guess, the power of people caring for you. Now, our last one
That's
is
it.
long-winded, sorry.
Oh.
That was fantastic.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing this. So hopefully we can get our camera back on.
Yeah,
the
that was a
camera on yet?
fantastic presentation,
Oh,
guys.
there's
Thank
the
you so
camera.
much. So much information and knowledge, and thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable and letting us all into how your journey has gone and all of the things that you've done and the struggles you faced. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. We just want to open up the floor now for any questions. There were a few that came through the chat. Where did they go? Oh, Jenny was wondering how often you get scans.
At this point, because I was stage 4, we were supposed to go to every 6 months, but because I was stage 4, they want to keep it at every 4 months. And up until that point, it was every 3 months.
Every 3 months, yeah.
So the next year will be every 4 months. So we got 2 more visits this year, and then we'll see then.
Yeah, we'll see then. Yeah.
Perfect. Paul was wondering, did you have genetic testing on your pancreatic tumor to discover any mutations? And if so, did they share any results with you?
We tried. We went through the program, the PanCan org down in the States. They had a Know Your Tumor program. So they did get a sample of Ben's tumor. But unfortunately, I guess the quality of it, or they didn't get enough of it. Unfortunately, they were not able to do it. So we never did. We never did get the results of what those potential genetic mutations were.
Okay. Natasha's wondering, have you met anyone with CP first, which I think is chronic pancreatitis, first before pancreatic cancer? She has necrotizing pancreatitis.
Have we ever met anyone with that? Your friend you were talking to the other day had pancreatitis.
Oh, yeah, Jen. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jen. Yeah, we met her on the Craig's Cause walk. She had surgery. Oh, she was in. Yeah.
But honestly,
I don't know much about it.
know much about it. We'll have to say that. I wish we did.
One more thing to research.
Yeah, one more thing to put on my to-do list.
Add it to the list. Paul is wondering, was it difficult to get a PET scan? From my understanding, it's not routine for pancreatic cancer. Could it be province dependent?
I'm not sure why you got the PET scan.
Yeah, and like Dr. Ravi said, he doesn't really rely on it very much.
Yeah, I think it was, to be honest, I think it was the surgeon that asked for it. Because they might have been talking about, I don't know why. I don't know why.
Well, perhaps they wanted because we were stage 4 and then we went back to stage 2 or 3 or whatever it would be. They had to review all my scans, and maybe they wanted a PET scan because there were 4 people.
But the PET scan was done first. It was the PET scan that was the first one that showed us. Yeah, then that's a bit of a puzzle to us. I don't know.
I wanted to inject the radiation into me just to see what would happen.
I think it was for the surgeon though, because I know our oncologist it basically said the same thing, that they're not usually used for pancreatic cancer patients, that they're not reliable. But you know, I guess it was just another tool in the toolbox to compare with other scans.
Totally. Brad had to run, but he just said, "You two are such amazing and beautiful people. Thank you for sharing your journey. Keep going strong." And Juliana said, did you go through education from a specialist nurse prior to surgery, informing you about the surgery, the post-op expectations, and do you get to speak to anyone who has gone through pancreatic cancers before surgery?
For me, I just looked at it as like my brother had said. Sadly, it's like this. My brother went in for surgery one day and they said to him, "Are you nervous about the surgery?" And he said, "Well, why would I be nervous?" He said, "Well, you may not wake up from it." And he said, "But if I don't wake up, then I don't wake up. It's not me who has to worry, it's the other people, who I leave behind." And sadly to say, I kind of looked at it that way. Like, I'm just going in here, this is going to save my life. Whatever happens, I'm going to deal with it as it comes to me,
But to answer the question,
Yeah.
no, we didn't have anybody come and speak to us about the surgery itself. We did a lot of Googling. We watched some YouTube videos. I think you even watched
Yeah,
the surgery.
watched more. Yeah, two of them.
Yeah. So I think part of it is, our healthcare system here in Nova Scotia is a little lacking. I think they would like to see more supports put in. But yeah.
Definitely a gap that needs to be filled for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Manish said, "Hi, Ben and Karen. If the CT scan is okay, but CA 19-9 is high, should one be concerned? And should it be below 40? That one should not worry." So I can just step in here if you want. Yeah, so CA 19-9 is sort of a relative number. It
Mhm.
can increase in pancreatic cancer, but it isn't definitive that your pancreatic cancer is getting worse. That's why they do a bunch of different tests. Yeah, so within normal range, again, is like sort of a relative number. Yeah, important to talk to.
It's from what we understand, it's based on the person and it's just one tool they use. In fact, just before Ben had a surgery, it shot up. We think it was because of some stress we were under, but so yeah, it shot up, but that at the end of the day, it didn't mean anything because it came right back down. So
Yeah, it was at 90, I think, and it went to 240 in a week.
yeah. So I think sometimes other things may be going on in your body that can be the cause of that.
Definitely, definitely just an inflammation marker that can signal other
Mhm.
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
Hi Karen, did you prepare his meals during his treatment, and where did you get ideas on what to cook?
Well, so during his treatment, we ended up both going on his diet, to be honest, because once he changed his diet, we just went both at it. So a lot of it kind of stayed the same. We just did like, gluten was one of his things. So we went to gluten bread. Um,
Dairy.
Dairy was another one. So we just switched the dairy with nut milks and stuff. But I did turn to, there's a few Facebook and on Instagram, a few people I follow because we try now to eat more whole foods. Not that we ate a whole lot of processed foods before, but we really know the importance now of cooking with whole foods and cooking with healthy oils and all that kind of thing. So I get a lot of my recipes just from some searching online. And in the beginning, we were doing a lot of smoothies too because he was finding it hard to eat, of course. So the vegan protein powder and just lots of healthy stuff jammed in there.
If I had to say anything, I would say, and Rick knows this, smaller meals, and I'm still struggle with eating smaller meals and get the Creon into you. Oh my goodness. And finally this week, like last night, I cooked some food and I was snacking while I was eating. Or sorry, snacking while I was cooking. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm not really as hungry as I was, but I got to eat all this food. So I ate half of it and I felt great. Normally I would eat the entire thing and then feel terrible afterwards.
Oh, definitely lesson learned. Um, Janet said, where was the tumor on the pancreas and how large on the liver and pancreas?
Okay, so the tumor on the pancreas at first was 1.6 centimeters, and then it grew to 2.4 centimeters, and I guess it was like an egg shaped. The liver lesions, all we really know about the liver lesions is that they were there. There wasn't one, there wasn't two, there was several, and that they were growing. So they didn't, and they said, but I think they were like slivers, so they weren't big enough to get a biopsy in there. That we do know.
Okay. Dean just added that she got a PET scan some time ago as well for her pancreatic cancer. Lori said, were you able to access your medical records? Did you have any difficulties accessing records?
The only time we really saw the records was when a new oncologist, a student, I guess, she showed us all our scans, and that was just to be able to see all your scans. But other than that, no.
Again, like in Nova Scotia, I know in down in the states especially, like you just log on and you have access to your results right away. Well, here if you get a CT scan, you're waiting at least 2 weeks, and then you have to go in and see your oncologist. As far as getting copies of our medical files, I'm sure we could.
We did get a copy
From his GP,
yeah, for something else, but yeah. But there are in Nova Scotia now, there's 10,000 people who have direct access to it. They're starting a new pilot.
They're doing a pilot now. So, it is the way of the future for sure. Because it is important for patients to be able to access all of their medical stuff and in a timely manner. So hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah, definitely. I know I'm in Ontario and we have my chart so you can access your stuff, but not all of your records go there, but it is definitely helpful and it is definitely uh something that we need to get in all the provinces. Ed said, Ben, did you get germline genetic testing to see if there are any hereditary mutations?
No, we didn't do that either. And I get that's the blood test, isn't it? Is that where you get?
I think there's two kinds. Steve would know.
Yeah. But no, that wasn't offered, and I guess we didn't push for it, probably because
We didn't know.
it's something that we learned along the way, but we learned it as things were improving. So it was just weird how it all happened. But no, it wasn't offered, not something we thought to even ask for.
And no one in my family's had pancreatic cancer. Just, yeah.
Yeah, it did seem to kind of come out of the blue for us.
Okay. Where did you get the food sensitivity testing done and was it costly?
It was costly. It was arranged through a naturopathic doctor. Ballpark figure, it was about $500. They send you to like a local clinic to get the blood done, and then they facilitate transferring it down or sending it down to the US. It was a lab in the US that did it. And so then it comes back with a report. It's the same test they do for people if they're celiac. There's different bars, and so that's kind of what we went off of to identify as sensitivities.
So, Manish just said, thanks a lot, Ben and Karen, for this wonderful session. Renat said, good meeting. Are you a diabetic or are you sugar-free?
No, I'm not a diabetic, not sugar-free. I don't, well, Karen is actually
it's kind of funny that I'm a diabetic,
but no, and I don't have any issues with if I eat sugar, I don't go up or down, but it's the Korean, I'm not producing enough enzymes.
Yeah, it's the enzymes that seem to be the big issue with his pancreas, but so far, cross our fingers.
And for anyone out there who has had it, the Whipple surgery and your gallbladder's gone, it's not your gallbladder produces an enzyme that breaks down the fats. This is something we've recently learned. So if you have a question and we did find an enzyme that works with that, our email, you can get in contact with Aaron and we can direct you to it. It's not like I wanted to start this thing, just so you know, we're not selling anything at the end of this thing. We're not selling this. We're just trying to help you.
Totally, and we so appreciate it. Oh, and Gary says the Oscar or Academy Award for Best Documentary behind me is for you, Ben and Karen. Not a joke.
Oh, I see it, Gary. I see it. Thank you, Gary.
That's so nice, Gary. Barbara said, I've been told that once your stage 4 Whipple is out of the question, what made them do yours?
I think it goes into a board of surgeons, and we had seen it what 2 months ago, 3 months ago. The guy that the surgeon he was telling about it, and he's on the board. So, and I know that Dr. Walt, she's one of the ones on the board, and they all look at it, and that's what our doctor said. She said that three of us, or me and three other surgeons, looked at your case, and they looked at it, and they said you're eligible.
I think the key was having those liver lesions disappear. And I am convinced that Ben's diet change was a huge factor in helping kind of
The chemo would be more efficient.
the chemo would be more efficient, the inflammation would be down from that, so then your immune system gets to fight a little better. Yeah, I just think taking and even mentally, like taking that mental turn, the positivity, we don't know at the end of the day, like, was it shit luck? You know, very possible. Because, we know Ben is a bit of an anomaly, but we cannot take away the fact that we think that, the diet and
Okay.
yeah, that's where we'll stand with that.
Awesome. And Marilyn said, was it a neuroendocrine tumor or was it an adenocarcinoma? How do you know what
Yeah.
stage you
Adenocarcinoma, that's what it was. We just knew the stage because of what our oncologist told us,
totally?
because of the spread to the liver.
So for anyone who's not familiar, so stage 1 is like local to one organ. Stage 2 is a certain size within an organ that's a little bit bigger than the stage 1. Stage 3 is locally advanced to lymph nodes, and then stage 4 is when it's spread to other organs. Where in the pancreas was the tumor, head, body, or tail? I think you mentioned that, but
Yeah, it was in the head. Sorry, we may not have mentioned that. Yeah.
It was exocrine. Someone just asked.
Exocrine, yeah.
Juliana said, if you were approached by someone who is just diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, would you tell him or her the truth about what to expect after surgery, such as the tubes, etc.? And would you tell him about the potential side effects post chemotherapy?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. But like in the end, like I said, I even as bad as it, even if even if the side effects were worse than what they have been, I would still do it. Like just because I'm still here, I still get to do what I love, you know. And even if I couldn't climb trees, guess what? I could still drive my tractor and do what I do. It's not driving my tractor defines me, but being able to do woodworking, I'm able to do this, I'm able to knit. So I'm still here. I'm still with my family. So yes, for sure.
It was
Totally.
worth it.
Definitely worth it.
Yeah.
And knowledge is power in that aspect too, right? The more you know, the more you can prepare to deal with things for sure. Alina said, thank you, Ben and Karen, greatly appreciated. Jill said, join Pocket Health. I think it's $50 a year and you get scans plus explanations. I don't know if that's available in Nova
Is
Scotia.
that
Yeah, I know
we'll
Jill
have
is in Ontario, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
Jill. Hey, Jill.
Natasha said, thanks so much, you guys. Not a question, but I just want to say I'm in New Zealand and we have way less help here. I'm alone with it all and currently in hospital with COVID, but I still try and keep hope. I will follow you more. I live on Creon and a multitude of meds for pain.
Definitely keep hope. If anything, there's been so many, even aside from our story, at the end of the day, miraculous recoveries happen. The doctors can't explain it. You know, the doctors don't know everything.
It's still a learning science in the medical field, by the way.
Yeah.
People don't know that.
I just say try and keep your mind on positive things. To the best of your ability, do things that bring you joy, even if it's doing puzzles or, small things that can keep your mind out of the fact that, you want to be realistic, but you have to try and keep yourself from going down that hole, which is, I understand it's hard to do. But again, don't hesitate to reach out and get some professional help because that can
When we talk about integrated health, if we look back 30, 35, 40 years ago about acupuncture, how it was poo-pooed by the sciences, and now it's part of our healthcare system. So we look at some of the, change in your diet, for instance. That's going to be a big thing in the future for us for cancer patients.
I believe that different repurposed drugs is also going to be an up and coming thing. I read a lot of research about that, and even different nutrient supplements can be part of that complementary therapy as well.
Definitely. Definitely. That's great. And also just keep in mind too that the statistics are the numbers, but somebody has to be in that 13% rate of survivors. So definitely never give up.
Absolutely.
So my
Thank you.
goal is, by the way, I told my doctor, I said initially, well, I'm going to be that patient that's going to live for 3 years. And then I said, no, it's 5, then 10, then 20. Then I said, you know what? I'm going to live as long as you're going to live, and that better be a long time.
Oh, love that. But Karen said, thank you for sharing so much information. Way better than all my Google searches. Amazing job, Ben and Karen.
Aw.
Thank you, Karen.
Um, Paul said, also the tumor location and blood vessels that are involved will determine if the tumor can be resected, for sure.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
We didn't have any blood vessel involvement, so that was lucky.
Yeah, definitely. Lori said exocrine or endocrine. You guys said exocrine, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Rick said, great presentation. Thanks for sharing your experiences. Paul said, sounds like Ben was a super responder to the chemo, and also the location of the tumor was amenable to surgery. Double luck.
Yes. Yes. We acknowledge that.
Yeah. I walk around to this day with a horseshoe on my backside.
Janet said, did you take any supplements or vitamins? How many rounds of gemcitabine and Abraxane did you take?
I had 8 rounds of the gemcitabine and then 5 rounds of the flufluranox. I took vitamin B, vitamin D. I had been on glucosamine chondroitin for years. Some oil capsules, omega-3s, and there was other stuff that we not talking about.
Awesome. Can having high enzymes in the liver lead to pancreatic cancer? I don't know if you guys know that. I'm not sure of that. I don't know if Steve wanted to
I
jump
mean,
in.
it can be a sign, definitely, because that's
Well,
how,
yeah, that's what my
yeah.
doctor said. I was running through my head about all the conversations, and that's what he said. He says, you have something serious here, and it was the high enzymes. And that's when I said, no, it's not. I don't drink too much alcohol. 5 beer a week is nothing.
But of course, that could be any other, like liver disease. Like there's other things that it could be pointing to as
It's
well.
definitely
But it's
a flag,
definitely a flag. Yes.
and we're not experts.
Sorry, I know I wasn't sure of the answer to that too, so I was like, oh, I don't know. Jenny said, thank you for sharing with all of us. I would like to reiterate the importance of diet. Spend time learning about
Yes.
this. I have to go now. Keep on going, both of you. Oh, thanks so much for
Thank you
coming.
very
Jenny.
much.
Great to have you. And Janet said, thank you for sharing your journey. Yeah, so thank you, everybody.